Welcome back to another episode of ChamberTalk, a podcast brought to you by Aberdeen and Grampian Chamber of Commerce. Today we are placing a focus on the North East taxi provisions, and to talk about what the future may hold, Uber's Head of Cities, Matthew Freckelton, joins us. Matthew, thanks for coming on. Things are seemingly moving fairly quickly in terms of Uber possibly coming to Aberdeen. There's a consultation which is open until this Friday at the time of recording, that's the 10th of May. And while we'll spend the podcast looking forward to a possible future for Uber in Aberdeen, we of course know this isn't the first time the taxi firm has tried to come to the city. Uber was granted a licence in 2018 before surrendering it. Just what went wrong there? Why was it surrendered those 5-6 years ago?
Yeah, hi Finlay. Thanks for inviting me onto the podcast. It's great to be here. Yeah, I've been at Uber just nearly 3 years now, so that was a bit before my time. The business has certainly changed since then, and we've had a much more stronger focus now over the last 6 months of expanding Uber across the country. So places like Aberdeen and Dundee are our focuses in Scotland. We've also been expanding into places like Swansea, Stockton-on-Tees, and Hull here in England. We see now that there are hundreds of thousands of people over successive months who have just been opening the Uber app, trying to use it. So these are people that may have travelled for work or pleasure, maybe to London, maybe to a different country. They've used the Uber app. They've come back to Aberdeen, naturally thinking that they can just open the app and get one of our vehicles, and then found that they can't. So as part of that kind of project of us kind of expanding, we saw Aberdeen as one of the key cities that we need to get licensed in, and so we can start providing our travel services to the good people of the Granite City.
And let's talk about the future then. There is some concerns I'm reading online and kind of social media, and it tends to be around driver numbers. We know they've dropped certainly by a few hundred since the pandemic, probably not unique to Aberdeen. How would you, firstly, kickstart Uber in the city, and secondly, ensure that growth is achievable to make it worthwhile for both company and for Uber passengers?
Yeah, we definitely see some challenges in Aberdeen around driver and vehicle numbers. And from the anecdotal conversations that we've had with the Chamber of Commerce, Business Improvement District, local politicians who we've met with, the airport, P&J Live, there's definitely, I think, a challenging licensing process that maybe the council has, which might be a little bit out of date. We've not personally yet got into the nitty-gritty of that policy. And we understand that there's probably going to be a policy review later this year that we will obviously respond to if we're licensed. And that will be taking our knowledge that we see from across the rest of the country. So we're licensed by over 63 councils across the whole of the UK. So we have a pretty good idea of what works and what doesn't work. And so we'll be looking to bring that expertise to Aberdeen and hopefully update the policy. So our challenges there is obviously when we go live, we will be taking from the existing pool of drivers, and we think drivers will want to come work for us. We give holiday pay to our drivers, which is 12% of their earnings, which is paid out weekly as cash. They have access to our pension plan with contributions from Uber. They get free sickness cover, and they also have the opportunity to upskill if they wish through a partnership that we have with Open University and their degree courses. And so we don't really think there's any other operator really in the country that has such stringent workers' rights as we provide. And then obviously when we have gone live with the drivers that are onboarded, we'll be looking to increase the supply of drivers and really grow the industry. Which will then mean that people in Aberdeen will find getting a private hire car with Uber and more generally a far more reliant kind of product and service offering. And so we can then hopefully get more people traveling in Aberdeen, going to use Uber for work, going to see a show, seeing friends and family, conducting some business. So we can then look to add to the general gross value add and economic output of Aberdeen. We see in other cities through some independent research we had conducted, for every kind of million trips that Uber does, we add about 18 million in economic activity. So that's the kind of the big picture that we want to bring to Aberdeen. If you pose the question in that route, does Aberdeen want 18 million pounds a year of extra economic activity? The answer is going to be yes, and we look forward to delivering that and so much more for Aberdeen.
No, and listen, I think anything that benefits the city centre and Aberdeen, certainly £18 million, the figure you've mentioned is very welcome. I was going to ask you, why would a taxi driver want to work with Uber? You've kind of answered that, but kind of looking across other cities in the UK that you've moved into, have you found challenges? Naturally, I'd imagine some of your pool is former taxi drivers, some of it's probably people coming into Uber and that's their first taxi company they've worked for. Have you found challenges in recruiting kind of instantly when you come into a city?
Yeah, in places. And I think you've got to understand the way Uber operates compared to, say, a traditional local
Yeah.
operator, where a driver might go work for that local operator. They have to pay that operator a fixed weekly, maybe a monthly fee. They may be renting a vehicle from that operator as well, which comes with a higher fee. And then they might be given a shift pattern or get told you've got to work a certain number of set hours. And then they're also being charged a set percentage fee, or maybe a 50p, £1 for every fare they do. So it can be quite a restrictive working model for a lot of drivers who are in that job for a full-time profession, which is absolutely fine. The Uber model isn't like that, so we don't charge a fee, a fixed weekly or monthly fee, to come work on the Uber platform. We just have a take rate that we take on the value of the trip, which makes it a lot more kind of flexible working opportunities. So you might have somebody in Aberdeen who's caring for a loved one, or maybe they're a stay-at-home mother looking after their kids and dropping them off morning and afternoon. And so they've got these sort of blocks of time, which might be sort of 4 or 5 hours, where they do want to take up some casual work, and then they can come and do that with Uber after they've been licensed by a council, got their driver license and their vehicle license. And then obviously as part of that, they'll get all the worker protection rights that I've just detailed.
There's an interesting figure that I picked up on your website. I think it's 2/3 or 66% to be exact of Uber users use Uber to access other types of modes of transport, presumably buses, trains, flights, I guess, in many ways. Is that one of the almost key points of Uber coming to Aberdeen, the ability to work from airports? And we've got an international airport here, Aberdeen International Airport. That must be one of the key reasons for coming up here.
Yeah, it varies from city to city on the specific details, but it's about 40% of trips begin or end near a transport hub, so a railway station or an airport. And we've had meetings, we've had a couple of phone calls with the airport. Obviously, there have been some specific issues at the airport recently with their changes in kind of pick up and drop off fees. We have a dedicated airport team in London who look after those relationships, do business development, look at commercial opportunities, advertising, ensuring that our pick up and drop off experience is as good as it could be. So yeah, we see great demand in those sectors, in those areas of the business. We've also recently, probably the last 12 months now, we've launched the ability that you can book a train ticket and an airplane ticket through the Uber app as well. So that's us trying to move into that position of being a kind of multimodal transport provider. So I envisage a point in the future in Aberdeen when we get licensed, you'll be able to get your Uber from your home to the airport. You'll then load up your airplane ticket in the Uber app. We'll fly you down into London. When you're in London, you can get Uber around, or if you need to get around on a train ticket, maybe you've got to get out of London and do a business meeting there, then you can also have the train ticket purchased within the Uber app. And we're doing at the moment a promotion where you get 10% cash back on train tickets, which then gets added as credit in your Uber account, which you can then use against future trips.
We're still awaiting, obviously, the outcome of the City Council's consultation. We, the Chamber, have a poll live right now to get reaction on the possibility of Uber coming to Aberdeen. When you've moved into these other cities, what has that reaction been like going into, I don't know, for example, Glasgow, Edinburgh, or other similar cities down south?
Yeah, the response has been fantastic. We've launched recently in the last month in Stockton-on-Tees and Swansea, obviously outside of Scotland, but they're the two new city launches we've done. We've seen tremendous demand for our product, far exceeded all expectations. And because we see that, we are now continuing to invest in those places and places like Aberdeen.
Now, there's a number of kind of towns and villages on the periphery of Aberdeen, but they're in Aberdeenshire council boundaries, the likes of Portlethen, Stonehaven, Westhill, and Inverurie. Can people in these surrounding areas access Uber, given it falls under different boundaries, or does that need a separate licence from Aberdeenshire Council?
Yeah, there is some very specific law that exists in Scotland around cross-border licensing, cross-border trips. So certainly if you're in Aberdeen city centre and you request an Uber and you try to get dropped off outside that's absolutely fine. But if you're a driver and you're outside the area and you're trying to do trips within that area, then we can't currently do those trips. We are looking at getting other licenses in Scotland, so I fully expect in some of those places we will be licensed, in due course.
So just to kind of be clear, let's take Stonehaven for example in Aberdeenshire. You could get an Uber if you're in the city centre in Aberdeen. You could get an Uber to Stonehaven.
Yes, you should be able to do that. That shouldn't be a problem. Yeah. We've got a lot of technology behind the scenes, as you can imagine. Lots of configuration kind of set up, which should hopefully keep us compliant.
Mm-hmm. And obviously, you wouldn't be able to get one from Stonehaven to another Aberdeenshire region. Could you get one then from somewhere in Aberdeenshire into Aberdeen City, into those boundaries, or would that require different licensing?
Yeah, I think areas like that we would struggle in because of the specific licensing that exists. It's a problem that we have in Glasgow as well and Edinburgh.
Yeah, you can imagine.
Glasgow Airport sits outside the Glasgow city boundary, which means if someone's trying to get an Uber from the airport into the city, the Uber kind of has to sit within Glasgow city boundary, and then we kind of pull it forward, which leads to long ETAs and wait times.
What kind of challenges do you envisage lying ahead in terms of trying to get a license in Aberdeen? We've kind of touched on the knowledge test. Is there any challenges that you perhaps had in Glasgow or Edinburgh that may repeat themselves up here? I know Scottish laws and various council laws are different to those in England.
I don't think we see many issues. As I said, we do need to get into the nitty gritty of the taxi policy in Aberdeen, which we've not done yet. We're working our way through that. When we get a license, then we'll get into the nitty gritty. So we've got a field sales team that will deploy in Aberdeen, and then any driver that wants to come on board with us, they'll find that out through the website. Meetings will be arranged with those drivers. We'll go through that onboarding process. So drivers will present their documents to us, ID check. Anybody that's used Uber outside of Aberdeen will know that when an Uber has been dispatched to you, you'll see the photograph of the driver in the app, and that's a photograph that we take as part of our ID check to make sure it is the correct person who's trying to onboard with us. Drivers can upload certain documents through the app themselves. Those documents are then reviewed and transcribed by our business processing operations team. So that'll be things like, the expiry date of the driver license or the vehicle license. So if a new version of that document hasn't been uploaded by the time it expires, then that document will automatically expire within our system. Then that will push the driver offline. So then we've not got any non-compliant vehicles driving on our platform, which is just one of our many safety features that we have.
How long is the process from, obviously we need to hire taxi drivers first for Uber to get off the ground. How long is that process for the driver then to go from leaving his company to start driving for Uber?
Yeah, so if we look on a time frame, so we know there's a licensing committee meeting coming up in June. So we've got this sort of 10th of May deadline for people to submit responses supporting. People can do that by emailing licensing@aberdencity.gov.uk. So say we get granted the license in June. From the city launches we've done recently, it's taken about a month to 2 months before we have gone live, going back to this sort of configuration setup we have to do behind the scenes. So it'll be in that sort of 2-month window that we'll also be onboarding drivers. And then we'll sort of do a formal announcement. You'll see it in the media, the news and the press that we will be going live. So there are several kind of parallel work packages that will happen as part of that process. But yeah, just sort of say June, maybe sort of July, probably sort of like maybe like end of August kind of time, we'd probably be looking to go formally live.
And I guess this is a fear from probably taxi companies in the Northeast, and I presume a fear from companies across the UK when Uber comes to their city. Can Uber coexist alongside taxi firms? Can it make them more successful?
Yeah, absolutely. So we fully support drivers being able to work for multiple operators in a city. That's something that we've campaigned with in partnership with GMB, who are our official union. And that's the first official union partnership in the gig economy that's taken place. And we've had that relationship since 2021. So there are specific bits of work that like Uber doesn't do at the moment, like school contract work for a local council. We've just not yet quite figured out how we would deliver that product and service because there are some extra specific kind of regulatory challenges around that. So we do see situations where a driver might have a local school contract work with a local operator, they'll do that in the morning and then in the afternoon, and then during the day they'll come work for us.
And just kind of finally to wrap up, I know in many ways it's out with your control, the timeline, but how soon would you like to see Uber in Aberdeen, and what's the aim, if there is an aim, for the number of Uber cars, Uber vehicles in the city?
Yeah, we don't have a kind of a set target date or time as yet. As I mentioned, this sort of maybe end of August, early September date. So far, where we have gone live, I mentioned earlier about Swansea and Stockton-on-Tees, are our expectations, which maybe internally we set them a bit low just to not get too excited about some of these launches. What we've actually seen that's been delivered has far exceeded our expectations. So yeah, no specific numbers to sort of divulge to you today, but we are very much looking forward to launching Uber in Aberdeen, and the support that we've had so far from all the people that we've met, Chamber, Business Improvement District, some of the local politicians, we've been very warmly welcomed, and certainly the news that we've seen and reading through all the comments on the news articles, I probably look on Twitter every day just trying to see if there's another comment from somebody, so yeah, we've felt very warmly welcomed and looking forward to working with all the key stakeholders in the city to grow Uber and move people around the city, increase gross value add, and hopefully support as many businesses as possible.
So just lastly, as we sit here at the start of May, there is a decent chance that I could be using an Uber in the city in, let's say, 4 months' time.
Yes, absolutely, 100%. And Finlay, I look forward on my next trip to Aberdeen. You and I can go for a couple of beers somewhere, and then jump in some Ubers, and I'll show you the full experience.
Wonderful, as long as you're buying. Matthew, thanks for your time. The consultation on Uber's future in Aberdeen, as Matthew mentioned, is open until Friday the 10th of May. People are invited to voice their support or any concerns they may have by emailing licensing@aberdeencity.gov.uk. Next week on Chamber Talk, we are putting an even bigger focus on Aberdeen City Centre. Amid falling footfall, I spoke to the North East Bus Alliance, Aberdeen Inspired, the co-leader of Aberdeen City Council, and one of the region's preeminent planning lawyers. Please do join us then.